Hello, I am Kristina Campbell, your host for Sexual Freedom for Women, where you can learn how to lose your inhibitions, deeply connect, and finally experience the pleasure you've always desired. Today, I am interviewing Dr. Elsbeth Meuth. I'm going to read a little snippet of her bio so that you can get an idea of who she is. She's doing amazing work in the world. Dr. Elsbeth Meuth has assisted thousands of women, couples, and singles to create lasting intimacy and fulfillment in their lives and relationships. She's featured on Showtime's documentary series Sexual Healing and the Emmy Award-winning NBC show Starting Over. She is the best-selling author of Sexual Enlightenment and has coached billionaires, innovators, and power couples all over the world. Welcome, Elsbeth. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, it's lovely. It's a lovely crisp morning after a beautiful rain last night. I'm feeling good.
Great, great. It's a little bit different here.
Is it snowy?
In Chicago. It's 27 degrees, splendid day, sunny but cold.
Cold. So today we are talking about how to awaken your feminine essence. So I would love to talk to you about how you came to do this work.
Oh, I love to share about that because that really brought me to the work I'm doing now. So as you probably can tell by my accent, I did not grow up in the United States. I grew up in Germany and came to the US in my late 20s to do postgraduate work in music. And from there, I kept teaching at a huge music school in Boston. And then I got my doctorate in education. And then from there, I became a management consultant. So 10 years into consulting, I found myself actually quite successful at consulting, yet miserable in terms of relationship. And what I was longing for was like a lasting, intimate, fulfilling relationship. And I was struggling with being attracted to unavailable men. While that was, quite exciting at times, most of the time I was alone. And in that place of despair, of resignation, that like lasting love may just not be part of my journey on this planet here, but I didn't want to give up. And that was the time when I decided to delve deeply into studying Tantra. And that practice, that learning opened up so much for me. It really shifted my, what I call now, my sexual spiritual being. And there was a particular practice that we also now teach at our institute to women and to couples. There's another practice for the men, but today I'm focusing all on the women, is that because, this, for me, this unavailability, and other women may have a different story, but when we don't have the sexual fulfillment, the intimate connection, the sustained feeling of love, both within and with a beloved, if we want to have a beloved, it's not only contingent on a beloved, what I'm sharing, then we need to clear what eludes us. So anyway, for me, that, what's in the way from me getting what I want, which was this lasting, intimate relationship, what I discovered on the journey of the healing practice of Tantra was that I held distrust towards men. Now, I didn't know that. It was like something in the background that I didn't know about, was not like here in my conscious mind, so I couldn't talk about it in therapy. However, what I tracked it back to in my healing process was when I was 18 years old. First love, first boyfriend, first intercourse, incredibly painful. And I had to go to the gynecologist, and the bill went home to my house. My dad opened it and all hell broke loose. So that was a moment when I felt so lost, so not understood, so alone. And also that was the time when I withdrew. And what I discovered was in my healing work that at that time I made the decision that men are never there for you when you really need them. Now, given that background decision, that background experience, that we call it was more living on my cellular level as, residual memory, yet not accessible to the conscious mind. When discovering that through the tantric healing work that involves the body, that involves our energies, that involves all of us, our spiritual being, our mental being, when that got cleared, when I could access it and then clearing it, which was initially not so comfortable because it brought back the old feelings, the pain, the emotional pain, the physical pain. However, in that clearing, what opened up was deeper trust in myself, then deeper trust in men. And 6 months later, my beloved came into my life, and he's still my beloved. He's my life partner. He's my business partner. And out of that healing, that clearing, I left the consulting firm and dedicated myself, my life, to sharing this opportunity with women now all over the world. And so I'm so privileged and not only to teach it, but also, to be here with you and sharing this with other women.
I'm so touched by your story. It's like the old, when you bring up that stuff comes up and you really do have to go through it. You have to walk through the painful fire, like walk through the fire, go through the process in order to get on the other side. It's not always easy, and so I'm glad that you brought that up. The painful stuff can arise, and we have to find a way in our society where we always retract from pain, but find a way in ourselves to be open to what is going to come up and to have the trust and faith that that we can integrate it, that we can handle whatever comes up when we start to go into a process of healing.
Yes. And if I may just build further on that, it's like, it's worth it. It's been worth in my life, and I see this with many other women I have worked with. It's worth it when I have the focus on the light, so to speak, on what I want, just going through pain, who would want to do that? However, with that view towards, wow, there's intimacy I want, this lasting intimacy, a beloved who just wants to be with me and I want to be with him, and that makes it all worth it.
Right. So trusting that when we have these experiences, to stay focused on what we really want and really having faith that it's available for us once we take responsibility for our own work.
Right. Even if we may not know how to get there.
Right. Mm-hmm. Really just trusting that it is there. Yes. So when you talk about feminine essence, how is that connected to living a fulfilled life? In your love and in your career, how do we keep faith? How do we trust that if we go through the process, and how does feminine essence, how is that really linked to this process?
Yeah, the good news is that all of that, what we want to experience into the future in terms of love, sexual fulfillment, intimate connection, there's already a knowingness within us. However, I look at it, the knowingness got cluttered up at some point. Like for me, with the 18-year-old who was so disappointed and felt alone. For others, for other women, it may be they got sexually abused or physically abused, or there was no dad to trust or no mom to trust. Whatever our story is, it's like it's like this. It's a constriction. It's like a protection. The way we tried to cope with what was so painful, because we didn't want to feel that pain anymore. So we constrict, and then we hold this in that pattern Now that's not conscious. It's like a reflex. Yeah, it's like the fight and flight, that kind of a behavioral thing. And and so, but unless we release that block, we cannot get to the underneath. And the underneath is already a knowingness of that feminine self, that intimate self. There's a knowingness, and we want to uncover it and rediscover it. So that's the good news, that it's a rediscovery. However, we need to, as we already alluded to, that we need to remove the block, we need to release the block, and so forth, so that we can come really to who we are, actually. And feminine essence, I call that wisdom that lives in our sexual center, actually. And when we listen to that center, which is called yoni, Y-O-N-I in Sanskrit, and yoni means sacred space. I actually brought her to show everybody how a yoni looks. So the yoni, the sacred space. Now imagine if all of us women listening here today, being in this conversation, had been introduced to our sacred space, to our sexual center as a sacred space. How different would my trajectory have been, instead of, oh no, don't go there. Wait until you are married. And then whose energy is it? Mine or the other person's? No, it always has been and always will be my energy. That is what brought me into this world. Now, what I want to do first is really connect with that energy more fully, including clearing whatever there may be from personal experiences or collective experiences. Like, Kristina, this thing with, that feminine sexual energy has been vilified for millennia. When a woman expresses her sexual self freely and joyously and pleasurably, she may be called a whore, like too expressive. And, or, where there is being said that, men, when they are in their prowess, the playboy, the harems, that's lauded, while when a woman may be in her power, sexual power, something wrong. She should be more modest or whatever. So that all has to do with, closing, constricting that energy that is our life force energy that emanates from our base, from our sexual center, moves actually up, because life force energy and sexual energy are the same. They just show up in different gradations, most of the time in a subtle state, then perhaps more pleasing, and perhaps at certain time quite aroused, climactic, so we can play on that scale. And it has to do with clearing our blocks that we may have around our sexual life force energy. And once that's cleared, which I call tapping into my feminine essence, connecting with my heart center, and then with my consciousness and spiritual center, really allows me to come back into my wholeness, into my flow, into my joy, into my pleasure. And so it's available to every woman who would like to reawaken that feminine essence within her and express it the way she wants it, through self-love, through self-pleasuring, through sharing it with a partner, or also to actually channel this into our creative pursuits. Like, I can use this creative pleasure energy, because that is what sexual energy is. It comes automatically with pleasure and creativity as ingredients, because it's the life-giving energy that has, brings forth life. And I can learn to use this beyond the baby making into writing a book, creating a summit for women, creating a business, of course, creating a baby. I mean, it's the same energy. And so what's available to us when we learn the practices, the tantric practices really allow us to cultivate that, is that we connect our sexual with our love center, with our consciousness center. So as you can tell, I'm just very passionate about this.
Yeah, and I wanted to touch on something you talked about too, which was, alluding to, women having abuse in their lives, or, either sexual abuse, emotional abuse, or a specific, trauma. But what you also were saying there is that just the culture that we live in actually, it teaches us how to close down. I mean, we are taught to control our sexuality because it's dangerous and it's only acceptable when we're married. If you were raised, even if you weren't raised in a religious family culture, we are, in a puritanical society around women's sexuality, and that, that it's okay, to feel that you may have experienced trauma or feel like you don't have access to your sexual energy, that it's not your fault, and that it actually was an amazing coping skill, that this is what we're taught to do to keep safe, and we're taught as young children that this is how you are if you're a girl. Close your legs, sit like a lady, don't touch yourself, all those things. I mean, we take all that in, what is right and what is wrong. And that's what teaches us how to be accepted, right? We need to be part of the community. We need to be accepted in the pack. And that, I have found that having compassion for where I was, and for having compassion for the coping skills that I had in my life, has allowed so much more release, instead of having regret that I didn't, have access earlier, or I didn't have this knowledge earlier, but really having compassion for myself, in the process. And I think that that is a beautiful part, and an easing to, letting off that layer and getting to the true inner knowing and the reawakening. It's so beautiful that you're talking about this connection, to that deep knowledge that's really there. We don't have to say, I need to learn something new. It's really about tapping into that consciousness that, that we have that knowledge there.
And what you are just opening up further, Kristina, is like, given the times we live in and the awakening of the woman, in 2018, and the coming further into her power, and not only to compete in the marketplace, which we have done for quite, several decades now. It is like the awakening to ourselves, to our full self-expression, and also for us women to wake up to creating the safe space. It has a lot, the coping, like the protecting, has a lot to do with that we didn't experience. It was safe to express myself, that it was safe to trust. Now men and boys are just as lost. They didn't get the education of what does it take actually for me to be grounded in my manhood instead of being driven by my manhood. And that is what I find so great about the tantric and the Taoist practices, is that the man learns how to channel his wonderful life or sexual energy so that he can be the master of of that energy, because that allows him to not have the space for himself without being driven, because that's really pretty helpless. If you're driven by something, you are totally a victim to something. I think every man is like that. But culturally, not in the US culture only, a global culture. And so the beauty here is that the man learns to connect and channel his energy so that he can stay grounded, come from that energy, and is connected in his heart, because from that place he can hold, we call it hold space for the woman. You know, when we look at the differences of masculine and feminine sexual energy, male sexual energy rises quickly, gets easily excited and drops quickly. Feminine energy rises slowly. It's a little capricious, you know, that we don't know if it's coming or going. However, when it's reawakened, it comes up to a plateau and can stay on the plateau for a long time. Multiple orgasms, orgasmic waves. Then here, it's really what's called for is like that the man learns to channel his energy into his heart so that he can meet her on the plateau. And then they can dance the wave together. Now, that doesn't mean that the plateau has to be like a 9 on a scale from 1 to 10, because that's rather goal-oriented again. It's much more about the journey where we can meet on a 4, on a 6, you know. It's not about getting there, it's about dancing together. That is where the fulfillment, the joy, the pleasure, the sustainability of that connection arises. So I am bringing this up here in the context of sexual freedom for women has to do with that we as women both want to, you know, awaken further to our sexual, emotional, spiritual self. And along the way, we want to, you know, invite men and also guide men into their full power, because it only is going to happen if we are going to dance together. And I don't mean just in the bedroom. It only happens if both parties transform, you know. And so anyway, and I also feel like that we women can make an impact there in, you know, becoming conscious about it. There's one more thing I want to add here, because sometimes I wonder why it took us women so long to be able to vote in this country. Like 100 years ago, we couldn't vote, you know. Where were we? Why didn't we demand it? Now, I'm totally clear that was a certain consciousness. I'm not blaming anybody. However, now let's move with velocity, you know, not waiting for someone out there for giving us rights. No, let's be the awakers of.
So I love this idea of being the awakers. And so what kind of tips or tools or advice would you give for a woman who, let's say, is in a relationship or not in a relationship and trying to attract a really conscious man, where she can start practicing how to bring out her sexual energy in a way that's not goal-oriented, in a way that holds space for a man to hold his own space? What are some ways that a woman might start being able to cultivate that type of sexuality and connection?
Yeah, there are a couple of places I want to go here that are required to frequent to visit. One is that we connect with ourselves. Can I just do a quick practice?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So listening, if you're listening here, if you could just sit on your chair or sofa, or if you're in the office, and place your right hand right above your pubic bone. And then take a deep breath in through the nose, down into your lungs, and follow it down, because when we do that, the diaphragm gets pushed down, and that in turn extends the belly into the hand. And on the exhalation, follow the breath, the air moving up through your lungs and back out of your nostrils again. Again, take a deep breath in through the nostrils, down into your lungs, pushing down the diaphragm, extending the belly like a big balloon. And on the exhalation, sending the breath back up and out of your nostrils. Continuing in this breathing pattern. And when you breathe in the next time, imagine the breath coming in through your nostrils, going down through your torso, all the way down into your belly, into your sexual center, your yoni center. And on the exhalation, sending the breath back up and out. And then one more time, breathing in all the way down into your sacred space, your yoni center. Imagine kissing your sacred space with your breath. And on the exhalation, let the breath energy move all the way down, all the way up and out of your nostrils again. And then continue breathing in your own rhythm. And just take a moment and notice how you're feeling right now. Removing your hand when you are ready. Kristina, would you be so kind and just share a little bit how you feel right now?
Yes. For me, when I take a moment to recenter myself, and it always takes me a couple of breaths to really relax my belly enough, more and more, that my diaphragm starts to relax and my belly can start to create space for all the energy that's there. That I start to really feel my, when I put intention on my yoni, I can start to feel my labia. I can sense my clitoris. I can sense the uterus inside that space and all the energy that's there. And it starts to open up a channel, to the heart back in, and there's really an expansioning in the heart too. And I know when I started to do this, I couldn't feel the connection. It was harder for me, and I would use my hand to just go up and down too, to draw that energy up and down, and I could start to feel it more and more slowly. And taking time for maybe 20 or 30 breaths to really open up that channel and really start to feel what's down there. And then it's like I'm more energized all throughout my body, that I'm oxygenated from all those deep, beautiful breaths. I'm awake, I'm present, I'm connected. And it really is that simple.
Yeah. Wow. What a great share. I just want to encourage others who may be listening here, and perhaps you didn't feel all that wonderful, what Kristina felt. Actually, there's good news, because I know you may feel like, wow, how am I going to learn how to feel like Kristina? So if I may bring up the gift I want to share.
Yeah.
Everybody, because I want to leave everybody with something that you can take into your life, so that you can learn in depth this channeling of your breath energy throughout you, that you can tap into your yoni center, your sacred space, as a place to connect with, like in an instant, and it calls for practice. And then there are other practice on that gift, which is a video download called Awaken to Your Feminine Essence, where you get further connected, not only with your sexual center, but also with your heart center, with your consciousness center, coming to connect with the beloved within. And that leads me to this second recommendation. So the first one is to really come to stillness and connection within. Because if I'm not connected within, how can I connect with my beloved? It's the last thing I probably want to do.
So just to pause you for a moment. So
yes.
Are you recommending that women do this, both as a daily practice and as something to do, in preparation for connection with a partner, or even in preparation for self-pleasure? Both?
All of it.
Mm-hmm.
All of what you just said, connecting with myself just to be present in the present moment. Also, just to connect with myself, you called it earlier, feeling more oxygenated, which means we feel more alive, the brain is more alive, the whole body, the blood flow gets regenerated, everything. Then also self-love, that is actually where I want to go next, is that to have a regular self-love practice, which is different from masturbation, and there's nothing wrong with masturbation. It's just only one path, a narrow path in which you can experience yourself. In self-love, and it's a path that is really goal-oriented, you know. Again, having this quickie, just great. However, there's a whole other dimension where you can expand into through self-love, which means that you encounter yourself as your beloved, as your lover, all in one. And in preparation for that, yes, and throughout the practice, you want to, you know, employ this way of breathing, because when we breathe like that, we can extend our orgasms. When we don't breathe, it goes like this. Oh, it feels so good. And then we stop breathing, and the energy flow stops, and the orgasmic flow stops as well. However, when I breathe through it, and I can go like this for 2-3 minutes, and it keeps going, and the waves keep going. So the practices in the video are for you as the listener to cultivate the foundation for that in your body, your physical body, in your emotional body, in your energetic body.
And when you were just, you know, giving us that little show of that, you were using your voice, you were using your sound. What does that have to do with sexual energy?
Everything. Our voice only is heard when there are vibrations going, you know, frequency is going. And that frequency of my voice, that vibration actually goes, I'm like an instrument. It's just like playing the violin, you know, when I activate the strings, when I activate my voice, the whole body comes into vibration. An orgasm is a vibration. So from my sexual center with my voice, that, you know, it just embellishes.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for that. You.
It heightens everything. And I know that, you know, some women have, and I have too, experienced this, this performance, you know, in the bedroom with a partner where, you know, we are think what we're supposed to look like and what we're supposed to sound like. And there is such a power in reclaiming your authentic voice and taking judgment out of how you sound and how you should sound, you know, just taking the judgment out of it. And when we really can, you know, connect to our breath, what I've found is that sound just, you know, it just naturally starts to eke its way out. And as we breathe more and as we emote more, we get into that undulating and into that trance, and that really in breathing and emoting, allowing sounds to come out, deepens the trance of sexuality, and it deepens that pulsating.
Yes, and that tapping, you know, what we started out with, that tapping into that already knowingness. It's not knowledge, it's the knowingness that lives in our body and is waiting to be rediscovered, reawakened, reconnected with. And that is where aliveness lives, where joy lives, where joy for life lives. And, you know, who wouldn't want that?
Right. And joy is right in that laughter. It's that same kind of, it's that same undulating energy that comes out. Absolutely. So when we allow more and more of that expressiveness and that undulating, it's directly connected to joy.
Are you a Tantra teacher?
No, but you know, I've just
like
experienced this stuff. Oh, Elsbeth, I am so grateful for you being here today. You have such a way with your words, and you're so sexy. Your energy is just so juicy.
Oh, thank you so much. There was always a touch of that for me. However, that got fully awakened. And I didn't come to Tantra to have better orgasms. I already had good orgasms. But there was this block of, having love and intimacy in my life in this very special way. And that was cleared for me. And then that connecting with my sensual sexual self, like as an integrated way of being, just really blossomed. And then having a beautiful man in my life who is, he grew up in a tantric household. So, and he's a guy who can hold space in a magnificent way, both for me and also, for all the women students who come here, and just being that man I talked about earlier, and so deeply connected in his heart and emotions. And so, yeah, thank you so much for acknowledging me for how I have evolved and being able to share this
Beautiful.
now.
Thank you so much. And so I just want to invite our audience to go and click on Elsbeth's free gift. They have so much to offer and just decades of experience. So I know that you are going to be truly blessed by what they have to offer in their free gift. And I just want to thank you so much again for being here today, for doing the work that you do in the world, and for sharing it with our audience.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Until we meet again, until the next interview, thank you all for watching. Bye-bye. If I can turn it off. Bye, everybody.